Everyone, we'll get started here in just a minute, so take your time. All right. Hello, everyone. Just a couple announcements. Milt won't be joining us tonight. He just had something come up last minute, but we still have quorum, so we're good there. Let's see. I was going to say something else. Commissioner Blanchard and Commissioner Schaefer are wearing the same sweater, so that's an important announcement.
The question is, why aren't you guys wearing the same sweater?
Well, you're right. I missed the memo. We forgot to distribute this out. So tonight's work session is with our very own Leon Lutzen. We knew he couldn't stay away very long, and he just wanted to come back and join us yet again. So he is here virtually tonight and will be presenting some information on the Grower Housing Program, which has been really kicking into gear of late. So we'll go through that, and then we'll do the agenda after he wraps up, and we'll get started at 6. So Leon, take it away.
All right, thanks, Aileen, and good to see everyone again. And she's right, really missed you guys. So although I did have the pleasure of a impromptu housing bonus ordinance discussion, I guess it was a month ago, and I'll be at council again tomorrow with that. So I'll share with you the Grower Housing Program. I was in the planning department forever, and then beginning of August, they finally got that position available. The program and the idea has been in place since 2018, but there had been kind of a slowdown in hiring for the position and fully launching the program. So I've been doing that for the last 4 to 5 months, and I'll walk you through kind of the high level, what are we focused on? What are the strategic priorities of the program, and highlight some projects that you've had come before you and that will likely come before you in the near future, not specific projects, but types of projects. So I'll share my screen and we'll get started. Hopefully, one sec. All right, so a little preview of everything we're going to go over here. So hopefully didn't read too closely. So again, just outlining what grower housing is all about. It's interesting. I think for this commission, most of you haven't been here long enough to have participated in any of those community conversations on growth and other major community discussions that kind of led to this idea. Let me see if I can reduce this so you can actually see my presentation. These numbers certainly need refreshing, but we, even a couple of years ago, knew that we had some challenges ahead of us in terms of new people to the community and how we would house them just from a numbers standpoint. So again, 50,000 new residents over the next 20 years based on typical household size, 20,000 living units needed a year, or needed in total, and 1,000 units per year. And that was kind of, again, the backdrop for what we've been doing for the last couple of years. On the right are some recent headlines that really indicate that there's some housing availability and definitely affordability issues in our community. And I'm sure most of you have read these articles, and I know that this commission is aware of the fact that housing seems to dominate our agenda, or our agendas, and has for several years as a result of all this. This is a pretty telling graph here, just kind of plotting household income versus household price. Obviously, this gap here is creating a lot of problems for a lot of different people in our community at various income levels. not just, lower wage or impoverished individuals, but just a wide range of folks are having a difficult time finding a home in our community as a result of what's going on there. And, the kind of the stagnation of wages is certainly a problem that we've been running into for a long time, operating at the same minimum wage level, the federal minimum wage level for the last 10 plus years, really is having an impact on, service industry workers and other folks kind of operating or earning in that realm. So we're very aware of that in housing, and the point of Grow Our Housing is to try to address that. Here again, just some quick numbers showing kind of the breakdown of our community from a area median income standpoint. 66% of the community is at 120% AMI or above, which, if you can read these down here, kind of shows you what an individual or a household of four are making as a result of existing at that level. But we have almost a third of our population at the low, very low, and extremely low area median income levels. And this is a number that's come up a lot. Someone making $16,000 a year in our community right now is having a really, really hard time finding any housing that really works for them. Particularly when you only consider 30% of that is supposed to go to housing. So now, we're talking about $300 to $350 that can be spent on housing in order to keep them out of the cost burden category. And that housing simply just doesn't exist in our community right now. So some of the things we've seen as a result of this as well is that we know 1 in 3 new housing units is going to need to be at 80% AMI or below if we just kind of plot forward what's going on with income levels in our community. In terms of existing housing, we know that we have a real deficit at 30% AMI and below. That doesn't mean that we're short 6,000 housing units. It means that a lot of folks at that household income level are having to spend a lot more on housing. And again, kind of entering that cost burden level of situation. And we also have a deficit at the 80 to 100% AMI level, although as you'll see in later slides, the market's doing a better job of addressing those. So as I mentioned, 1,000 new living units per year was the goal. Good news is we've been doing that. We've been exceeding that, actually. Unfortunately, we have not seen that excess supply is actually reducing housing prices yet. For anybody who's been paying attention lately, I mean, it's just incredible that during the time of a pandemic, we can have such incredible rise in median housing price. But it all speaks to the desirability of Boise and kind of some of the population trends in terms of in-migration from areas where higher wages are attainable. The whole disconnect of the live-work situation is allowing people to earn wages in areas that pay a lot higher and live in a place like Boise where housing is relatively lower compared to other major U.S. cities, particularly on the West. So we're seeing some interesting things there. Despite our, we said we need 1,000 a year, we're getting well over that, and it's still not really making a dent. So the other part of that story is, what are we doing on the income restricted housing side? Many of you have seen these projects work. I mean, I've personally brought at least 3 of these to you over the last year and a half. So we are making some progress on the income restricted housing front. Some of these are city-led or city-funded. Some of these are with partners in the community like El-Ada. Some are actually city properties that we are rehabbing with continued funding from HUD. So we've been able to get about 200, and I would say this is over the last 2 years, roughly. Still not really getting to that minimum of 300 new that we need, or 333 new that we need each year. So although overall housing is growing, we haven't seen a huge jump on this side. Back to my earlier comment about the market addressing a lot of the 80% AMI and above, a market analysis we did in 2019 is actually demonstrating that, we are seeing unit affordability happening at 80% AMI and above, but the private market is not doing much for below 80% AMI for obvious reasons. I mean, just the revenue lost on creating those units without some dedicated funding sources or other public intervention really doesn't make a lot of sense for most most people engaged in development who are trying to earn money. So that's where the Grow Our Housing program is stepping in. 4 major priorities of this program. First is establishing a land trust, ongoing public and private funding cooperation between the city and private partners, as well as other public partners like CCDC, IHFA, and other groups like that. Maximizing land use allowances, and I'm going to walk you through these a little bit more so that you can kind of see some of the projects and where that you've seen and where they align according to these strategies. And then finally, expanding the housing incentive, which we ran in the downtown roughly from 2016 to 2018. I think in general it was considered a success, but we've retooled that program pretty significantly and taken a much deeper dive or closer look at how we can promote more affordability. So in terms of the land trust, this is a project that came before you not too long ago. Franklin and Orchard, this is kind of our first land trust project. 200 plus units. The commercial square footage, I think, is actually greater than 5,000 last time I checked. 80% of these units will be at 60% AMI or below, which is a big win for the community and for the city's efforts to address affordability. And the way this works is that we retain ownership of the land, lease the land to a developer to improve with what you see here. Essentially they generate revenue off of those improvements. And at the end of 50 years, we figure out if we re-up for that partnership or if other options exist. But we're seeing a lot of success with this. We actually just purchased another property on State Street. Earlier last week, we completed the sale or the purchase of the former Smokey Davis site, which is at Arthur and State Street. So that will be the next property that we put through a process similar like this. And given what we want out of that property, you're likely to see some entitlement needed to get that done. And I'll be speaking to you again when that happens. So public and private funding, as I mentioned before, working with both private firms as well as our public partners. Here's 3 that have recently occurred. Adair Manor, this is over in the main Fairview area. New Path, which is a permanent supportive housing project, also in the main and Fairview area. And then Valor Point, which is on State Street. And again, another permanent supportive housing project. This one's specifically focused on the housing of homeless veterans. So the third strategy, maximizing land use allowances. So things that you've seen along those lines, the accessory dwelling unit code update. And if Milt were here, I think he was a part of that one, but I'm not sure if any of our commissioners were on the board when that one came through. But that was essentially making it easier to develop ADUs by increasing allowed size and the number of bedrooms that could be included, as well as reducing some of the parking standards. We're currently engaged in a zoning code rewrite, which is a long-term project that probably a year to a year and a half at least before we see anything in front of you, I would imagine. That timeline could change. It's constantly changing. We've been thinking about this rewrite for over a year at least at this point. And then finally, the housing bonus ordinance, which all of you were a part of, like I said, roughly a month ago. So those all fit within the Grow Our Housing universe. And then finally, as I mentioned before, expanding the housing incentives. So we've been reworking what that structure is going to look like. In 2016 to 2018, it was $1,000 for a traditional unit and $2,000 for an affordable unit. As you can see over here on the left, we've significantly increased the amount of money per unit with the requirement that they provide it at an AMI level that's desperately needed in the community. We are doing a 15-year term of affordability, which some have pushed on and asked why not more. Others have stated that's too much. I have learned a lot about pro formas and how all this works from a revenue standpoint, and I'm it's impressive what needs to go into that. And I think this is, thankfully we have the support of council to kind of pivot on this after 3 or 6 months if we discover, we need to be targeting other area median incomes or working on these terms of affordability. So it's a very fluid program that way, but we're pretty excited to get it launched. It's actually going on our website here either today or tomorrow, and we'll start fielding applications. In terms of what those applications look like, there's eligibility criteria centered around location, neighborhood compatibility. That's where P&Z could likely come in terms of determining what is actually compatible. And then obviously level of affordability is one of those are the three criteria you need to even submit an application. And then we score according to project location, the diversity within the project, any adaptive reuse, placemaking and amenities, so the overall quality of the design of the project, how parking is handled. And these last three are really focused on kind of the what our climate team has been doing at the city, but green construction practices, energy, and in general sustainability. It's a rolling acceptance for these applications. We'll be using a cross-departmental team to score all of those and review them and make recommendations to City Council to fund. And as I mentioned before, it's a quarterly update process with City Council to make sure that the program is kind of hitting the targets that we're aiming for. So in conclusion, that's Grow Our Housing. And I wanted to give you guys some time to ask questions or go over anything that didn't make sense. So thank you.
Hey, Leon.
Yes.
How, with the natural disasters in California and other weather events, and then the pandemic causing a lot of need for rapid rehousing around the country, have we incorporated any of that kind of thinking into our planning?
We're going to use Robert rules here, right? Even though it's pre-6 o'clock, you guys know that I'm the worst at that. So I will do my best. Chairman, Commissioner Blanchard, I would say that a rapid rehousing project could be funded through that program, but it's not really the main target. Interestingly enough, we're going through a study right now with a national firm, CSH, which I believe is Community Supportive Housing is the firm, and a local firm, Agnew Beck, to get a much better understanding of the permanent supportive housing need in our community and kind of what our targets should be. So I could see us, again, pivoting some of these funds or some of these efforts towards that in the event that the findings from the studies say it's needed. I mean, obviously there are clear rapid rehousing needs in our community right now. I mean, and I know that IndieDwell has done some great things in that regard in other communities, particularly in the West. So, but right now, I would say it could qualify, but it's not probably the main focus of the program.
And that was not meant to be a plug for our company by any means. Just we follow that market closely, and it's just, yeah, there's so many different applications that we're seeing out there. So I just wondered if that was a gap in our planning, or if it's if something that's been contemplated already. So it's just, we're seeing a ton of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Leon, thanks for the update. Appreciate it. Got some good work going on there. I'm just wondering, it seems to me that it's almost like it's a two-pronged problem, right? There's a lack of housing, but then as you mentioned earlier, wage stagnation is an issue. And, I think we're making some progress on the housing side of things. I'm just wondering if there's what else is happening on the other side of the discussion, right? And is there coordination happening with, your efforts and then, efforts to hopefully improve wage growth in the city and the Treasure Valley at large? Anything you can speak to on that side?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, I personally haven't been engaged in the wage discussions, but we understand the relationship, the unbreakable relationship between that. I'm not sure, we have Ann Griesmeyer in the mayor's office who is kind of keeping her eye on the state capitol and any bills that come forth that would address that, she's going to be a part of. I think it's clearly needed here. And I mean, I'm speaking from a personal perspective here. It's just what we've seen from, again, the break of the live work. Like you don't need to live where you work anymore. I think I'm concerned it could exacerbate the Boise situation as a result of that. And I think maybe it's even started to happen a little bit. So I know that we have folks focused on that. I am personally not engaged in that, but I can't talk about housing without talking about what people make. So I get pulled into those conversations a lot. And I hope that we can make some progress there. I mean, from the national perspective, I can't remember the number of states that all just raised their minimum wage, but I mean, it's a national conversation as well. And sadly, Idaho has not. And like I said, almost 11 years. Hopefully that changes soon because there's a lot of people who need it.
Right. Yeah. And then, like I said, I mean, certainly with our scope here, right, we're looking at housing. That's what we're doing. But it just seems to be that I think we need to make sure that that loop's getting closed, right? And you're right. I mean, it's not like it's a local problem by any means. And then we have that extra layer of the difficulty of working with the state legislatures to improve that. So I guess something that if as you learn more about that piece, if there's ways that we can help with that, I'd be interested in understanding that better.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Thank you so much, Leon. Great presentation. And hopefully, I think we'll probably get that emailed out to us, but I think that would be helpful to look at that data again.
I'd be happy to share it. Yeah. And there's a lot on our website now, but again, you're going to see likely a lot of entitlement stuff for projects seeking housing incentive funding, land trust projects, a lot of these partnership projects. So grower housing will be present at a lot of P&Z stuff moving forward, just as a result of needing to get those entitlements through. But yeah, thank you. And thank you for all the work that you guys are doing. I mean, I had the real privilege of bringing a lot of housing projects in front of you over the years. And we have a pretty sophisticated commission. So thank you for all your time and effort.
Thanks, Leon.
Okay.
Thanks, Leon. All right, well, we're early. We can go through the agenda and then give ourselves a longer bathroom break before we start at 6, if you'd like. Yes?
Yes, that sounds great. Let's
Okay.
move forward with that.
All right, so we have minutes, December minutes for the consent agenda, and then new business. We've got a time extension on Maple Grove. That's not typically a hearing where we ask anyone if you're here or anything like that, so that should be just on consent.
Okay.
And that's it for consent, I think,
Mhm.
tonight. Number 1, CER 2015, PUD 2042, CVA 2064, and sub 2051 and 58 are all on 33rd Street near Forsythia and Hill Road. Quite the combo packet there, but we do have 2 people that have signed up. We had a few people sign up. If you remember, all of these items from tonight were from December 14th, which we deferred. So a lot of these signups are from December 14th, and they didn't sign up again tonight. So we're not sure if they are going to attend or not. So,
Okay, I'll just ask, since there's nobody here in
Yes.
person right now, I'll just ask everybody to virtually raise their hand online when they want to speak on an item, and we can cross their name off as they go.
Yep.
If we have them also on the sign up list, I can do a kind of last call
Yep.
at the end.
That sounds good. Number 2, CAR 20-19 is a rezone on State Street from PCDD to C5DDDA. We are recommending approval. There's a few people that have signed up, so we will be hearing that one. Number 3, CAR 20-16 on Eugene Lane. This is again off Hill Road. It's an annexation of almost 3 acres for an A1 DA zone. We are recommending approval. There was some neighborhood opposition. A few people signed up. Number 4, CUP 20-50. It's a conditional use permit for a drive-up window with a financial institution. We are recommending approval. I believe the applicant was opposed to conditions, so we don't have anyone signed up to speak yet, but that should maybe be a short one. And then number 5, CUP 20-44 and CVA 20-63 is a conditional use permit for outdoor storage on 15 acres on Victory Road. We are recommending approval. There was some opposition with a few people signing up last month. So we will hear that one as well. Yeah, so I would recommend we do breaks every hour and a half or so. And does anyone have questions?
If I forget, if anybody online wants to shoot me a chat saying if you need a break, happy to oblige that.
Or you can yell now, Commissioner Blanchard. Although we're gonna miss seeing your cats tonight, so.
Oh, I hate to bring this up, but poor Commissioner Lonnie passed about a couple weeks after she appeared.
Oh,
Oh.
tough.
So
I'm sorry.
She was old and lived a good life.
Yes.
Sad.
All right, well, on that somber note, let's take a break for the next 20 minutes and we'll meet you back here at 6.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. All right, welcome everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing has automatically been muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. If the chat function isn't available for you, you can email zoninginfo@cityofboise.org with any technical issues. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who have signed up on the online sign-up sheet in advance, then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone tonight, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. And finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Tonight's agenda and proceedings might have a bit of a delay as we all navigate through the technology. Please be courteous and kind while we venture through this hybrid format. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Celine. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances and appeals, and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important that you give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there's no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for virtually attending tonight, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Squires,
Here.
Blanchard,
Here.
Moore,
Here.
Benfrock,
Here.
6 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. So first, without objection, I will place the minutes from December 7th, 2020 and December 14th, 2020 on the consent agenda. And then the only item actually that we have otherwise for the consent agenda is that we have a request to defer item A to January 7th, 2023. So without objection from the commission, I will also place item A on the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I believe that's a time extension, not a deferral, just to be.
Thank you. I'm
be clear.
sorry.
You're good.
A time extension, excuse me. We've requested for a time extension until January 7th, 2023. So we will place item A on the consent agenda as well.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Schaefer.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Squires. And will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Benfrock.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. So we will start with item number 1. This is CAR 20-15 for River Ridge Engineering Company. This is an item deferred from December 14th, 2020 at 3435 North 33rd Street. It's a rezone of 1 acre from R1C to R1M. Also includes PUD 20-42 and CVA 20-64, conditional use permit, and SUB 20-51 and SUB 20-58. For a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision. We'll start with staff, and I think you're up, Mr. Holmes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Hopefully you can all see my screen here. This item before you is a request for the rezone of approximately 1 acre from an R1C single-family residential zoning to an R1MD town lot with design review. Also included is a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 14 townhomes, a perimeter setback variance, a preliminary plat, and a final plat for the first phase of the development. Property shown here in red is located on the corner of Forsythia and 33rd Street, just southeast from the Hill and 36th Street Neighborhood Activity Center. The subject property has a compact land use designation and an existing R1C zoning is shown here. Compact land use designation does allow for a variety of zonings, including the requested R1M zone. Residential uses surround the property with a mixture of densities, including single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, and multifamily homes. Directly adjacent to the subject property are single-family homes and a multifamily development with a density of 16 units per acre to the southwest. To the west lies North 36th Street, which has a bus stop about 1,000 feet from the property. And to the east is Hill Road with an established bike route. The planned townhome development is arranged as shown here, with the majority of homes fronting on either Forsythia or 33rd Street. The density of the development at approximately 16 units per acre is just under the limit of the proposed R1M zone. Each home is proposed to have a 2-car garage with 7 guest parking spaces on site and additional on-street parking. 15 and 12-foot side yard setbacks landscaped with trees and a 6-foot solid wood fence buffer the adjacent single-family and multifamily properties. Frontages are proposed to be improved with 5-foot attached sidewalks with connections leading to the front porches of each townhome. The approximately 1,900 square foot townhomes are designed with 2 stories of living space and a rooftop deck. The covered access stairwell to the deck is under the 35-foot height limit of both the proposed R1MD zone and the adjacent R1C zones. A further design review approval would be required to ensure compliance with the city's design standards. The planning team did receive a number of comments which were included in last month's late correspondence packet. The majority of these expressed concerns related to the compatibility of the townhomes with the existing neighborhood, increases to traffic, and parking along adjacent streets. In conclusion, as detailed in the project report and highlighted in this presentation, planning team finds that the applicant's proposal is consistent with the standards of approval, including the Development Code, Blueprint Boise, and the requirements of all reviewing agencies and departments. As such, the planning team is recommending approval of the applications with conditions. For PUDs and the associated variance, the commission is the decision-making body, and for the rezoning subdivisions, it is the recommending body for city council. Thanks, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. We'll next move on to hear from the applicant. So that's Mr. Wenzel, and we'll start with 10 minutes, please. Please start with your name and address too, when you're ready to go.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Brian Wenzel with Pivot North Design, and my address is 2314 North 34th Street in Boise, 83703. I think I have a quick presentation to show you if that would be okay. I'll share my screen. Although Mr. Holmes did a great job. I trust you all could see this.
Yes.
Great. As Mr. Holmes said, the site is located at 33rd and Forsythia in the Sunset District of Boise on the north end. And this aerial photo is a little outdated. Currently, there's Forsythia Place to the north of us. Just threw in the plots there to show, some of the adjacent context that that Kevin had spoken about. This slide shows just some of our proximity and how we're starting to understand the site. We're within a 5-minute walk of the neighborhood center at 36th and Hill, quite generous bus stop with close proximity, and as mentioned, pretty close multifamily housing. We've tried to incorporate some of the goals of the plans of the planning department in planning of this project and be sympathetic to our neighbors as well. Here you can see the site, and we've chosen to rezone to a density that we feel is appropriate. We want to introduce homes, which we understand is a desire of the city, but also be sympathetic about how we do so. So we've chosen to break our for sale townhomes into clusters of 3 or 4, and oriented them facing the streets where, if at all possible. That means the 7 on Forsythia and the 4 on 33rd to the east really give a lot of eyes on the street, activate the ground level, help give a sense of ownership to the community, And where the units couldn't be located on the street as drive aisle was needed to get in and access the site, there are 3 homes clustered in a building on recreational open space, which is thoughtfully located to the south for prime sun exposure. Just kind of enumerated some of the goals that we're trying to achieve, such as a mix of uses, a variety of housing types. I think the density was covered. We have connectivity by incorporating sidewalks throughout our site and stoops, front doors that access the street, and sidewalks on streets to connect residents to those great amenities such as the bike path, the trails that are close to us, and public transit. We're also looking at some infill design principles, transitions in building height and mass, and feel this is an appropriate scale transition between the multifamily, more dense product to the southwest and some of the newer homes to the north, the existing homes to the east. And we're trying to be thoughtful about garage placement and design by locating efficient double-loaded drive aisles and front doors on the perimeter. We also feel we're adapting to the neighborhood character, and I'll talk about the style in a short minute. The unit layouts themselves are three bedroom, 2.5 bath. On the ground level is a living dining kitchen, a two-car garage servicing the units for private garage is located behind the unit. Upstairs, there are 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and then the stair continues up to a roof deck, which we feel is a really special amenity for the north end. You'll see here in the gray is a stoop, which we're trying to give that north end feel by elevating up the units, an internal stair to get from the garage upstairs to the living, up a few stairs. And we're really trying to embrace, some potential concerns of our neighbors about how we incorporate with the neighborhood. So above, you can see the existing photo of the site, fences in a little bit of disrepair, but that's the historic nature of some of the properties. But we're trying to really embrace the corner, and the architectural style we've chosen is a contemporary interpretation of a North End aesthetic. So trying to break down the elevations horizontally and vertically, use a lot of high quality materials, really create a sense of permanence, and make it feel contemporary, but also timeless, I guess, and not just in the current moment. So we have a cool contemporary palette, warm accents such as wood siding and brick, and generous landscaping on the perimeter. And we've studied a lot about how it fits into the context, such as, Forsythia Place across the street, pretty new, but we're trying to use some of the similar palette, exterior plaster, vertical siding, enhanced materials at the base, and a variety of roof forms of gables and hip roofs to further articulate the elevations. Here's a view from the neighbors across the street. We're trying to break the buildings down both in color palette to break down the scale, but then literally with gaps to give more outside corner windows and make the buildings feel like they're not one monotonous long elevation. And here's a view looking from the other side of Forsythia, and how we've articulated a 4-sided architecture with high quality permanent materials. The aerial photos, not many people are going to perceive it like this, but wanted to kind of explain the open space here, generously consolidating all the open space as an amenity for the project. And internal of the site, we have 7 guest parking, only 2 are required. So between the 28 on-site garages and the 7 guest parking, 5 addition to the 2 that's required, we feel there's generous parking and won't have to rely on street parking. Here's a view from the northeast and some other ground level perspectives that were provided in our proposal, just kind of showing some of the street conditions, the eyes on the street, the stoops, how people who live here could really make this a sense of community. And you can see the open space on the top right. I believe that is the slides that I wanted to go through. We have some elevations as well, actually. I'm sorry, we don't have elevations, but I will just in closing, just kind of talk about some of the conditions that we understand there are. One of them, which is site access across the site. We'd like to, if appropriate to mention now, we'd like to request that not be a condition only because we can't control what will happen in the future we're willing to work with future developers, but it's hard to know that one or two parcels getting bought on the opposite side of us and continuing the internal drive aisle seems like that would encumber our site and make a psychological hindrance to some of the buyers. And if a big enough parcel were consolidated to have a comparable project to our south, for instance, they would probably be required to have their own site access. So I'd like to ask for some relief there. I think it was condition 5, and condition 2 was activating the street elevation for 33rd on the side of the garage. We could potentially build our buildings closer to the neighbor to our east, the single family you could see on the right of the screen, but we've chosen to give them plenty of relief, turn our stair, have a 2-story element adjacent to them, and really try to be as good a neighbor as we can. In doing so, we have to have some relief to our garage setback. And we tried to really think about this as 4-sided architecture with simple gables and consistent massing, and ask that you look at our windows and the way we've broken down our massing and see that it's not just a flat elevation, it's really a 4-sided gable elevation. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wenzel. So next we would move to the Sunset Neighborhood Association, but I'm not sure we have anybody representing. Do we have somebody on the line representing the Sunset Neighborhood Association tonight? Please virtually raise your hand if you're here. Okay, seeing none, then we will move on to questions from the commission for staff or for the applicant.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Squires.
I would just like to clarify the conditions that the applicant is asking for relief for. Sorry, I'm scrolling through the staff report and one of the conditions did not align with what the narrative he was stating. If staff could perhaps point me to the right direction.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, actually I can share my screen. I have them up if we'd all just want to take a look at them, if that would help you, Commissioner Squires. Give me 1 second here. So I believe the conditions that the applicant was specifically talking about was, so this number 5, which was a condition to record a cross-access easement along basically the terminus of both of those drive aisles, just in case the neighboring properties were to redevelop in the future, they would have that option to utilize those drive aisles. And then the condition number 2, which was just to more work with the design review team to add some design elements to that side elevation facing 33rd, potentially bringing some over from the front elevations of the townhomes directly to the south, just to increase some interest there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
This question is for Kevin. I had a question about the density. You said that there was increased density to, I believe, the southwest. Can you show us on a map exactly where that is in relation to the townhomes? I thought I saw maybe a parking area, but I was a little confused about this.
Sure, Madam Chair, Commissioner Finfrock. Hopefully you can see this slide here. And so this property to the southwest, all along, let's say B34th, is a multifamily development from the 70s or so that has a comparable density of 16 dwelling units per acre.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock, yeah, go ahead.
One more question. On condition 5, I'm a little confused about that. Can you walk us through why we would not want to allow that exception?
Sure, and Madam Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, this condition is usually, it's kind of a standard condition, if you will, for a lot of these developments that have drive aisles that terminate near a property line. And really the intent is so that in the future, should, let's say, some of the neighboring properties redevelop, they would at least have that option to potentially use this access as well to increase connectivity in the area.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions. Oh, Commissioner Schaefer, I think I
Sorry,
got you.
Madam Chair. I'm not used to being remote, so I'm slow on the unmute button tonight.
Please go ahead.
Thanks. A couple questions for staff. I'm sorry, Kevin, I'm flipping back through the presentation. On the rezone question, the surrounding area, the immediate properties all around are R1C. Were those multifamily parcels, to the west and southwest, were they always R1C at the time they were permitted?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, it appears so. Like I said, they were built kind of in the mid 70s, and really we don't have any planning records related to how they came about. But as historically, it does look like they have always been R1C.
Okay, so follow up on that. So then obviously those are larger parcels, which is therefore how we're getting the density that we see in those projects, correct? There wasn't I guess my question is, this would be the only non-R1C parcel in the vicinity. And I'm just curious about the history, I guess, of that area and how we kind of got to this point.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, you are correct. This would be, all the surrounding properties are R1C. So this would be the exception there. I think if we were to see these types of multifamily developments that are existing come in today, though, they would be in a different zoning category than R1C. Just kind of the historical nature of how they've developed. That's not what we see today.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then Madam Chair, a follow-up?
Yes, Commissioner Schaefer.
Kevin, and then if you would please just walk us through the variance request. I'm not quite sure I followed the logic on the hardship discussion within our packet. Can you just walk us through that issue?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, yeah, I'd be happy to. And hopefully this slide kind of helps illustrate it. So with this application, there was a requirement to dedicate a little bit of additional right-of-way along 33rd, which, so if you kind of look at this slide here with the built environment, the property line is about 10 feet back from the edge of curb. So when you add that additional 20-foot street side setback for parking that the R1M zoning district requires, really you're looking at the garage needing to be, if we were following code, approximately 29 feet back from the driveway turn in, which far exceeds even the surrounding R1C zoning district, where you're looking at a 15-foot step back for side loaded garage, which this is basically what it is. I think, not to guess what our historical predecessors were attempting to do with the R1M zoning, but I think a lot of the 20-foot side setback there was more pointing towards detached garages, which we see a lot of times with townhomes, rather than these attached, which kind of matches up with the living space when they're attached. So hopefully that helps answer the question.
It does. And just a quick follow-up on that, then in conjunction with this, if I remember correctly, they've increased the buffer along the properties to the west at the same time, right? We've mostly, I believe, doubled the buffer on that west side. Is that right? Or the setback on that west side?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, you're correct. Yeah, so along the west side, we're looking at I believe a 12-foot setback, where really they technically would only require a 5-foot typically with an R1M zone, which also matches, the R1C zoning. So you have side yard like setbacks, but in this case, yeah, it's almost tripled.
Okay. Terrific. All right. That does it for me. Thanks, Kevin.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
A follow-up question. So that multifamily that we're seeing right there, where your cursor just was, is that that's 3 stories or is it 2 stories? It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, it's actually 2 stories.
Thank you.
Okay. So next we will actually move on to our public testimony. So if you're interested in testifying on this item tonight, please virtually raise your hand. Great, and we'll just kind of start working our way down the list. We'll start with Andrew Peterson. And please just give us a moment while we switch you over to a panelist. Andrew, please, when you're ready, start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes once you unmute. So Andrew Peterson, yeah, you should go ahead.
Can you hear me yet?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the chance to speak. My wife and I live in the home that's directly east of this lot that we're talking about.
Mr. Peterson, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Can you please start with your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. Andrew Peterson, 3361 West Forsythia Drive in Boise, 83703.
Great.
So yeah, we live right to the east of the property. And we don't want the townhomes like this. There are too many of them and they're too tall. 3 stories a few feet away from us is with people going up on the roof deck is really an invasion of our privacy. If you look at that aerial view and you see how far away the existing 2-story apartments are, they're about 5 times as far away as these buildings, and those existing ones are only 2 stories. This is right next to our fence, and they're 3 stories with the deck on top. We feel when people are up on these decks and looking down on all the neighbors that's an invasion of our privacy. I've also, if you have a chance to look through the slides, I made a little bit of a slide presentation that shows the existing character of the neighborhood. I also went to some areas where there were some recently developed areas like this, and those show the character of the homes that are typical in the North End for those kinds of developments. This is way out of character for what you see in the North End. I disagree that this kind of development matches the North End or is in any way reflective of the North End. So we object to the traffic. We object to the amount of people that are towering over us. It's just an intrusive thing that's out of character for the North End, and we hope that you would not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Next, we'll hear from Greg Carabrisi. Please start with your name and address once you unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. This is Greg Carabrisi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. 3360 West Forsythia Drive, 83703. I am across from this proposed project, directly across from the proposed project, where the 7 units will be. I also have severe concerns with 2 primary topics, one being privacy and another one being public parking, or at least parking in general. If you think about the 2-car garage and the 7 extra spaces that they're allowing, or at least they're saying is more than what is standard code for this type of project, what you're not thinking of and what everyone needs to think of is how many cars will be able to fit in those garages. If you think about large SUVs, large trucks, large vans, all the, call it sporting equipment, bikes, kayaks, just overall sporting gear that people usually put in their garage. Well, those 7 spots will be 100% filled all the time. And that will put overflow on the streets of Forsythia and 33rd. So that also provides a hazard for children as well as people walking their dogs, but mostly children, biking. You're not going to be able to pull out of your driveway while you can not see cars coming down Forsythia. And Forsythia is a very busy street. I will tell you that, from Hill through Forsythia to 36th, very busy. The other piece I will mention is, again, back to the privacy piece. There is no project in the North End that has rooftop decks. And if you think about when you go out in the balcony, whether it be at a rental place, a beach, or maybe Sun Valley, the first thing you do is look around. When these people go on their decks, the first thing they're going to do is look down and look into windows, look into backyards. It's just the natural habit for your eyes to wander. So there's a privacy concern there. My window, upstairs window that looks into a bathroom, looks across from this project. I can only imagine a 35-foot deck, someone looking across into my house, into my bathroom. So that's the two major concerns I have: parking, privacy. We understand that there's going to be a project built here. I mean, it's a great piece of land, but the project itself is just not the north end. It needs to be reduced and allow for more parking. And that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Calabrese. Next, we'll hear from Esther Ceja, and just give us a moment while we switch you over. And then Ms. Ceja, please start with your name and address when you're ready. Just give us a moment, please. Okay, Esther, you should be good to go once you unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Esther Ceja, and I reside at 3901 North Cambria Way, Boise, 83703. So growth, I know, is inevitable. We had those 18, 19 houses to the north of this proposal that were built within the last several years, and some residents and neighbors had concerns about those as well. On this particular project, my only comment is that third floor. The development should align with the existing housing in that area. So I think that third rooftop floor it doesn't align with the neighborhood. So I'd ask that the Planning and Zoning Commission reconsider that component of the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ceja. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay. One more moment. Okay, seeing none. We'll next move on to a rebuttal from the applicant. So we'll give 5 minutes again to Mr. Wenzel. Please start again with your name, Mr. Wenzel, when you're ready.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Brian Wenzel, the applicant again, 2314 North 34th Street in Boise. And understand the concerns, appreciate the input from the neighbors. One thing I will say is we have gone to the neighborhood meetings a few times and really are interested in getting the feedback and embracing it. And we've made significant changes, as some folks will know, and our development team knows. We've really tried to embrace their comments and hear them. And I personally live on 34th Street, so right in the area. So I've taken personal investment in this, not that that matters, but I do really want to make a great, successful project that our whole team does actually, that people will move in, and 14 great neighbors that take as much involvement in their community as these folks do here. So I really appreciate the input. I guess the first one was the height of the roof decks, and just wanted to clarify, I didn't have the elevations pulled up for the first presentation, but the height of the roof deck is 24 feet to the bottom of the railing. So wanted to clarify it's not actually 35 feet tall. So we're all aware of really you're standing in line with the roof of the third floor, not above the third floor, and lower than the roof of the third floor, to be honest. And the other consideration was the parking. And I just wanted to reiterate that our garages are going to be 2-car per city standard. So we're complying with the requirements the city has established for functional usable garages. Our units have generous storage, and we've worked hard to make them marketable so that people will want to be invested in their home and also make this a desirable place to live. So if there's plenty of storage in the unit, functional garages, plenty of parking, that'll ensure that, you know, our development team can get the type of interest that he's looking for to make this a great project. So again, exceeding code parking by quite a bit. We've got half a stall per unit in guest parking, not 1 per 10. So quite a bit of guest parking we've chosen to provide. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wenzel. So next, we will close the public portion of the hearing, and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
I recommend approval of CAR 20-15, SUB 20-51, SUB 20-58, and move to approve PUD 20-42 or recommend approval for PUD 20-42, CVA 20-64, along with the standard and recommended and standard conditions of approval.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Moore. Any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
There was a couple issues discussed tonight during the public comments, so I'll just kind of break it down. To address the height, the project, I believe, is 34 feet in height, which is less than the allowed 35-foot height requirement. As to traffic, Ada County Highway District reviewed the project and approved it. And as to the parking, there's no variance request, so it does meet the parking requirement per code. And I understand the concern in the density. I do think there is a transition that is allowed from that other higher density units to the southwest, but at the same time, I think that we are close to downtown and we should utilize this space, you know, the best way we can. And I think townhomes is probably a pretty good way to do that.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
I support the motion, of course, and yeah, everything that Commissioner Finfrock said. In terms of the height, 35 feet is the max in both R1C and the R1M. So regardless of which zone it would be, and it would be 35 feet is allowed either way. So that's not really a variance or different than what might be there, even if it was a single family house. And in terms of the access, and as your planning staff stated, it's a standard condition. I support including that and defer to design review for working out kind of the elevations of that as well.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I'll be supporting the motion as well. I agree with comments from Commissioner Finfrock and Commissioner Moore. Just a couple of follow-up comments. Certainly understand the concerns from the neighborhood. I think that the applicant has done a nice job of orienting the buildings to the site and being mindful of the surrounding properties. So as we discussed the setbacks and the variance request, I think they've done a nice job in that regard. As far as the existing properties around, you know, I definitely appreciate the concern and the desire to see more of the same, but I would counter that with, I think this is a nice addition to the neighborhood in adding another unit mix, another style of property or house into the neighborhood. So I appreciate that change, especially given its proximity to 36th and Hill and the transit routes and those services in the area. And then I guess just to touch base quickly on the rooftop decks, I agree that the total building heights are below what's allowed in the zone and other comparable zones. I would just ask maybe the applicant to continue to look at those rooftop decks and maybe incorporate some sort of other screening or amenities, right, to help with some of the privacy concerns that the neighbors have in the vicinity. And then in regards to the two conditions that the applicant brought up, I'm apt to leave those two conditions as they're written. I don't see any real detriment to keeping them in the application. And so I'm in support of the motion as written.
Okay, so just to recap here, we have A motion to recommend approval for CAR 20-15 and SUB 20-51 and SUB 20-58, and motion to approve PUD 20-42 and CVA 20-64. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Finfrock.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. So next we'll move on to item number 2. This is CAR 20-19 for GGLO, also deferred from December 14th, 2020, 1522 West State Street. This is a rezone of 0.36 acres from PCDD to C5 DDDA. We'll start first with staff, and it looks like that's going to be Mr. Moser.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the commission. The applicant is requesting a rezone of 0.36 acres from PCDD, pedestrian commercial with downtown designer view overlay, to C5DD with a DA, which is the central business district with a downtown designer view overlay and a development agreement. The site is located at the northeast corner of State Street and 16th Street, both arterial roadways, and is situated within the downtown planning area and within the West Side Downtown Urban Renewal District. It is also designated as downtown mixed use on the land use map within Blueprint Boise. The subject property is currently occupied by a gas station and a convenience store. And as you can see from the aerial photograph here, the surrounding area consists of the Albertsons to the northwest. And then across the street is the Rite Aid, which is a retail pharmacy store, and the offices, and there are offices surrounding the site adjacent to the north and to the east. The subject property was part of a recent city-initiated rezone that removed the C2 zoning from the State Street corridor. A key goal of that amendment was to promote a more compact, pedestrian-oriented development pattern rather than auto-centric development encouraged in the C2 zone. The PC zone remains an appropriate zone for much of State Street, which includes the subject property. However, it does not accommodate the residential density allowed by the proposed C5 zone. The existing PC zone would limit the property to about 15 units an acre, whereas there is no density limit in the C5. The surrounding area is a mix of uses, which includes commercial along 15th, 16th, and State Street. These commercial uses transition into a mix of residential, multifamily, and offices about 2 blocks to the north State Street. The transition of this residential neighborhood into a mix of uses has occurred over many years and includes a 5-story multi-family building located 2 blocks away at 16th and Franklin. In addition, this mixed-use neighborhood creates a separation between the site and the established detached single-family historic neighborhood of the North End. As such, these residential neighborhoods are compatible and will not be adversely impacted by the proposed C5 zone with the development agreement. The DA a DA is attached to the property since the site is not contiguous to C5 zoning. The proposed DA ties the site to this project that you see here. This development is a 6-story mixed-use building, which contains approximately 4,000 square feet of ground floor commercial and 105 residential dwelling units on the upper floors. The project design here is conceptual, and the project specifics such as bedroom count, landscaping, parking, will be addressed with the design review application in the future. And the proposed uses, residential, commercial, are allowed in the C5 zone. The development agreement will also ensure the compatibility of the rezone with the surrounding neighborhood. The project design concentrates the building height at the intersection of State Street and 16th Streets and provides a measurable transition with the adjacent properties, which is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It will also alleviate the project's adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood. In addition, the applicant has also agreed to provide affordable housing at 80 to 100% AMI, area mean income, for about 5 units of the development. The affordable housing will also be a requirement of the development agreement itself. In summary, all the required findings for the rezone to C5 have been met. The planning team did receive several letters of opposition, which the planning or the commission should have received both within the packet and within 2 late correspondence memos. The neighbors expressed concerns with the building mass and height. The project design concentrates the tallest part of the structure at the intersection and steps the building height to the north, down to the north and to the east. This provides a transition with the adjacent properties and their anticipated future development. As for the future use of the site, it will be locked in with the DA, which identifies office and retail, commercial, and residential. Auto-centric uses such as drive-throughs are not allowed here due to the DA. And in order for a drive-through or something auto-centric to occur, the DA would have to be modified, which ultimately would have to go back to City Council for approval. Finally, this is not spot zoning. Since it is located within the West Side Downtown Urban Renewal District, the downtown planning area, the downtown mixed-use land use designation, it's located at the intersection of 2 arterial roadways and complies with multiple policies and goals of the comprehensive plan and other city planning documents. So in conclusion, all the required findings for this rezone have been met, and therefore the planning team recommends approval. The commission makes recommendation on rezone to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. We'll next hear from the applicant. We'll start with 10 minutes. I see maybe 2 of you on, so please just start with your name and address and then name again as if you pass it back and forth. Thank you.
Sure. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Matthew Cameron Clark, and I live at 406 West Sherman Street. This is actually my first housing development, so I'm very excited to be joining you tonight, working toward providing some much needed housing for our community. Although I am new to this pursuit, I'm fortunate enough to have partners and collaborators on this project who have decades of experience, and we believe that with your support, we can build something really special and clearly needed by the city. I'm a Boise native, born right downtown at St. Luke's, and I have a deep affection for this city, for our downtown, and for the North End in particular, where I've lived most of my adult life. As some of you may know, I spent 25 years in the nonprofit professional theater world and was surrounded by extraordinary people there who work very hard to make Boise a more interesting, diverse, and vibrant place to live, all while making a very modest living. These artists and technicians, along with Boise's restaurant workers, grocery store employees, educators, healthcare workers, delivery drivers, and many others, make up a workforce that is struggling to find affordable and livable housing close enough to the walkable heart of the city. We believe that adding to the inventory of available units in the right locations is the best way to address this issue. In the summer of 2019, we began looking for an appropriate site to build some beautiful new efficient apartments with walkability, affordability, and livability as our top priorities. In addition to our firsthand knowledge of the neighborhood, we've used Blueprint Boise and a number of other plans, including transit and bicycle access, as reference to identify what we believe is an ideal location at the corner of 16th and State. Transition zone between the North End and the downtown core, right at the edge of the downtown mixed use area is designated in Boise's comprehensive plan. With the zoning adjustment we're asking for tonight, including the strict limitations outlined in our development agreement, we could make a meaningful contribution to Boise's housing needs in a location with all the necessary services accessible on foot. To give you a better idea of why this is an ideal site for this building, I want to hand it off to our architect for the project, Tom Sheldon of GGLO.
Hello, this is Tom Sheldon at GGLO Architects, 1199 Shoreline Drive, Suite 290, Boise. Share my screen here and see if okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'd like to kind of explain a little bit of what goes through our mind when a client like Matthew gives us a site and we do our analysis. And the first thing we do is we go into Blueprint Boise. Now, of course, you guys all know this, but I'm going to mention this because this actually is the precursor to how we do our overlays to determine if this is the right site for housing and also for housing for the workforce in downtown Boise. So here are some of the goals that we're trying to meet, that Blueprint Boise is meeting. We look for sites that have opportunities to meet most of the daily needs within walking distance. We want workforce housing in areas that are near transit, which is important. We want zoning areas that can remove barriers, particularly in the downtown mixed use zone. And that's really the key here, is the downtown mixed use zone, which we're in. Traffic is an issue and will become more of an issue as time goes. And so we actually are looking for sites that actually reduce traffic. And this is a gas station that not only has more curb cuts than you can imagine, but also has a lot of traffic. We encourage compact developments that actually decrease the traffic counts. Also, Blueprint Boise lists brownfield sites, which are sites that are underutilized, parking lots, gas stations, things like that, that are actually in the downtown area. Regarding housing, we want to incorporate higher density housing, again, next to transit. We want the highest intensity uses within a quarter block or quarter mile of transit stops. We want to locate the high density residential, particularly in areas, again, with transit. And you can see a theme here. Workforce housing, we want it to be downtown where people can live and work and play without using their car. And also all the services are available, from grocery stores to schools to pharmacies, restaurants. So I want to quote here exactly what we feel. This is Boise staff report. This is exactly where the development code envisioned a C5 zone to occur. In particular, the subject property is located in the West Side Urban Downtown Renewal District. It's in the downtown planning area and is designated in the downtown mixed use area within the comprehensive plan. And the rezone is supported by multiple policies in the comprehensive plan, which I have listed. So what we do is we're going to apply these overlays to demonstrate that we're not proposing that this is going to be a precedent to build this type of housing to the north or to the west, but we're going to keep it in the downtown mixed use zone, which here's an overlay for the Blueprint Boise downtown planning area. This is the downtown planning area. We're right on the edge of it. This is the overlay of the downtown mixed use zone, which we're still in, but the land actually gets smaller and limits your area for development. Because transit is important for housing for the workforce, we incorporated the State Street Priority Corridor, which is where the TOD stations are, which we happen to have 2 of them right across the street from us, which you can see with the 2 black dots. One's going eastbound, one's going westbound. And we are within a 5-minute walk of transit station. This is where the Boise Blueprint's potential brownfield sites are. And again, these are underutilized sites that the comprehensive plan actually is encouraging development, which we are in, which is a gas station. And then, of course, you can see in the light blue, we're within the West Side Urban Renewal District. So we have a very limited area here for development, and we're not proposing. We've met with the North End group a couple of times, and they were concerned about housing density maybe moving further north. The goal here is to actually keep it on the corridor where the transit is. And then as the staff report mentioned, we are proposing to step the building down as you go to the north. So the rezone is consistent with the standards of approval. This is precisely the location close to downtown where additional housing should be accommodated. We're providing housing with a compact development as a means to reduce traffic. We're providing higher density housing along transit corridors. We're providing housing affordable for people working in the downtown, and that's key. Providing housing within walking distance of the daily services. Providing housing where employment is located. And then finally, we're providing development that meets many of the Blueprint Boise goals. I have all the drawings for the building design, but I thought I'd stop here and see if there's any questions regarding our process on the location and how it meets the Blue Pit Boise goals.
Mr. Sheldon, we'll actually do questions at the end of this section. So go ahead if you have more presentation and we'll address questions.
Well, I have a minute left here. I just want to mention that we met with the the neighborhood group in our neighborhood meeting, and there was some comments about stepping the building down, which we did here. As you can see, we're stepping it not only to the north, but we're also stepping it to the east as you're coming from the Capitol. As you can see here, here's the massing, which you saw, and this is where we're stepping it down. Some statistics, we're about 100 to 105 units, about 4,000 square feet of non-residential, and in that would be your leasing office, potentially a little coffee shop or something, back of house, things like that. We're stepping the building from 18 feet up to 85 feet, which is part of the development agreement limit. Approximately over 3,000 square feet of private open space, and we're only about a third of an acre. And as it mentioned in there, we are providing 5 affordable units that are part of the development agreement. And so here's just kind of the layout: retail at the corner with parking in the back, housing above with open space, fully landscaped with public open or with private open space on the podium level. And as you can see, here's where we're stepping down. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sheldon. So next we would be hearing from the North End Neighborhood Association. Do we have anybody present tonight representing the Neighborhood Association? If so, please virtually raise the hand. Okay, seeing nobody there. So next we will be moving on to questions from the commission for staff or for the applicant.
Madam Chair.
Let's start with Commissioner Schaefer and then Commissioner Finfrock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for staff. I'm curious, I think for staff, we'll start with David anyway. I'm curious how we settled on the 85-foot building height maximum.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the 85-foot building maximum was requested by the applicant. Normally the C5 zone doesn't have a building height max, so we were looking at something ways to reduce it down. 85 gets, I guess, a little bit higher or higher ceilings in the structure and allows for maybe to accommodate any roof units they might have. Or also the plan is conceptual at this point, and we'll have to go through design review. So it gives them a little more flexibility on the design. And it still provides the protection we thought and scales it to the adjacent neighborhood at 85.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
The follow-up, I was wondering if maybe Mr. Sheldon or Mr. Cameron can speak to that that building height a little bit more.
Yeah, very good question. The building height is 85 feet, many things. One is it's the limits to the construction type that we're doing that's affordable in order to build the building. It won't be a high-rise construction. We can't go over 85 feet. The other thing too is we're not adding another floor. What we're doing is we're stretching the floors because quality of the unit and the quality of living is so important when you have high density housing. And so we actually are proposing that there's floor to ceiling windows. And so we have a little more height in the units. If you squish this down, it's really kind of ruining the quality of these units. And that's not what we want to do for the folks that would be living here. So construction type, and then also to add floor to ceiling windows to bring in light.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair, follow-up for staff.
Commissioner Schaefer.
David, any idea how far, I guess, what's the proximity to how close is the next building of that height to this property? Any idea?
There is Madam Chair, members of the commission, of this height, you'd have to get a little bit closer to downtown. There is a 5-story structure just 2 blocks away at 16th and Franklin. It's a multi-story building.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Finfrock.
Madam Chair, this question is for staff. I think David had a memo dated December 14th that talked about some drawings that showed the compatibility of the surrounding area. And I was just wondering if he could show us those drawings. It might help give us an idea of the density in the surrounding area.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I don't know exactly what.
Sorry, not to put you on the spot. I think it was in our late correspondence package, and I think the memo, it looked like, I believe it was dated December 14th.
Okay, let me take a look here. And it probably was a correspondence received from the applicant. They might have a better access to it. If it came in late. But
if that question applies to them, maybe they could answer that.
I'm sorry, what are you looking for?
Some conceptual drawings as to, I think you did a comparison of the density or the height density for the surrounding area. I think you probably had some drawings that just compared the height for your application in comparison to the surrounding areas. Is that correct?
I think some of those last slides you showed, Tom, that show the step downs to the existing buildings and building envelopes next door.
And if you don't have it, that's okay. I just thought it might help us, or at least give us an idea as to what the surrounding area looks like.
Is this what, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so this, if this is what you're talking about, this is the building to the north right here. And we're actually, in some portions, we're going to be shorter than that building, and then it steps up. And then this is a medical office building to the east on State Street, right here. The building to the north is likely to, it's probably one of those brownfield sites that is likely to be developed. The one on State Street is a medical office, and it'll probably stay. It's a little taller, as you can see. We weren't really asked to reduce the height to the east. That was more of a design decision because folks coming from the Capitol, as they're driving, we thought it was important that they actually see a transition. So that was really our gesture to do it not only from the north, but also to the east.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So in the late correspondence, I think the Neighborhood Association noted that they went through kind of a work session. They worked with the city to develop this PC zone, and were concerned that it was being changed just within a couple of years. During that kind of those work sessions, is there any kind of discussion of the possibility of things like this changing to a C5 and things like that? I mean, is this kind of a topic of discussion while you're kind of planning out that PC zoning in that area?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, there was that whole where we basically rezoned the C2 zone to PC. It was always sort of, given or sort of that this ultimately could change, given its proximity to downtown and the more appropriateness of having a C5 zone here. I wasn't actually participating too much in those particular meetings with the neighborhood. So I don't know if that was specifically brought up or a point of discussion at that time, but I think it's always sort of been assumed that, that the applicant could come in and rezone it as long as to a C5 or a different zone, as long as they're maintaining the intent of the PC zone, which is to not make it, to keep it not auto-centric, keep it more pedestrian oriented and more downtown and design and feel.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, follow up on that discussion.
Yes, Commissioner Schaefer.
David, I didn't see anything in the DA in our packet related to drive-through, permitting a drive-through at the property. Is that included in the DA or limiting that use?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the DA doesn't specifically outlaw the drive-throughs. It doesn't prohibit it, but it does tie the site to this specific design, and there is no drive-through in this design. So they would have to change the DA to change this concept to put a DA or to put a drive-through in, and that's a whole DA modification. Would have to come back before this commission and ultimately the city council.
Okay, so next we will be moving on to public testimony. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break before that though, but if you're interested in speaking on this item tonight, please virtually raise your hand. And when we come back at about 10 after, I'll just start going through the list. Thank you so much. See you in 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. We are back. So again, if you're interested in speaking tonight, please virtually raise your hand so that we can call on you. Okay, we'll start first with Jared Austin. Please, when you're ready to unmute, please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Perfect. My name is Jared Austin. I live at 4211 West Fairmont Street. First of all, I'd like to thank the commission for their time today and just getting to look at all these different projects for our city. We all love this place and we all want it to be better. So thank you for your time. I'm here today to voice my support for this project. I think it's a good conceptual project for the location that it's in. It has a good amount of density also that Boise sometimes has less of. This amount of density should help in reducing the demand for sprawl near the edges of our city as we continue to grow. This type of development should also increase demand and support for a lot of our businesses in and around the downtown core, especially during COVID. This is pretty important to think about with perhaps our workforces kind of rearranging a bit with standard offices, maybe having fewer people returning to them, more residential near these types of amenities that we have so many of downtown will help keep these places alive, even with fewer people returning to offices once COVID is under control. This place has so much walkability compared to almost any other project that I've seen recently. This might be the best. It's literally across the street from a grocery store, not a gas station, it was a gas station. It's across the street from a drugstore. It has a laundromat within walking distance. There are schools within walking distance. There are restaurants close by. There's so much close to this potential development. It's a great use of space. It's great for transportation needs, as was mentioned. This is on one of the best transportation lines in the state with the number 9 route. And it's a great utilization of this investment. And that's the other thing with this development. This utilizes investments that the city has made in the area in a very good way. Density allows us to capture those monetary investments that we've made and make sure that they're well utilized. So this project should add diversity to housing options in the area. If people look at this project and say, well, I wouldn't want to live there, sometimes that's not the point. Just know that there are other people who would want to live there, and there are quite a few of them. This is especially true in an area near an area of town that can be a little more expensive and a little more exclusive and a little more insulated from both density and affordability, mostly due to single family zoning. This type of development really helps give more people more options and more places to live. And having the ability to do so without a car really is an extra cherry on top. So given all that, I urge you to approve this rezone, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Is there anybody else tonight that would like to speak on this project? Oh, good. There's a couple of hands. Let's start with Drew Alexander, please. Give us a moment to switch you over to be a panelist. And then when you're ready to unmute, please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name is Drew Alexander, and I live at 1519 West Fort Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I live 3 blocks from the proposed project. I walk, bike, or drive by this site numerous times per week, and I would like to express my support for the proposal. 10 years ago, when I purchased a home where I did, I knew the location came with some consequences. Primarily, I knew I was near downtown and that additional downtown development was likely in the future. I embraced that idea because I feel that cities are at their best when dynamic uses like this are in place and a variety of options exist for residents and businesses alike. No places are better at doing that than areas in downtowns or near downtowns. As such, this is the exact type of project I had in mind when contemplating that future, and I'm excited to see it before you tonight. Some of the opposition relates to the zoning. As Mr. Moser pointed out, this is in the downtown planning area, and I feel that C5 feels entirely appropriate. There also seems to be some concern about a loss or change to the PC zone. And I too would argue that this project, more than anything, might ensure that adjacent PC zoning is more vibrant and successful due to the residential density that it provides. From code, the purpose of the PC zone is to provide for pedestrian-friendly retail, office, and mixed-use development in pedestrian-friendly environments. And further, it states to foster pedestrian-oriented design. A quick Google image search results in a theme of buildings of this stature in downtown settings when you search pedestrian oriented. Additionally, State Street is gradually, hopefully transitioning one of Boise's strongest transit corridors. Being adjacent to State Street and within walking distance of downtown, any perceived impacts to parking and traffic are not a concern for me. The only thing I would encourage is that some of the 4,000 square feet of non-residential area is programmed for retail or commercial. I imagine whether it's sandwiches or coffee being sold, it will be appealing to the neighborhood. As Boise continues to grow, we're bound to see projects like this, which at first glance may appear to be out of scale with what exists today. I think that's because they're bold and attempting to set a precedent that hopefully speaks toward a healthy evolution for a growing city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Next, we'll hear from Patrick Spouts. When you unmute, Mr. Spouts, please start with your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Spouts. I live at 912 West Brumbach in Boise in the North End. So this is at the edge of my neighborhood, and I want to voice strong support for similar reasons that Drew and Jared just presented. As part of a vibrant, growing city that has a lot of people who would like to join us, and particularly a lot of people who would like the opportunity to live near downtown, near parts of the North End that are very desirable, and in a place that has some of the better or at least more decent access to transit in the city. I think this is an ideal place to accommodate that growing density. I have not much else to add other than I think it's a great project and I welcome this project in my neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Spouts. Next, we'll hear from Alexandra Monhar, and we'll just give us a moment while we switch you over. There you are. And when you unmute, please start with your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Alexandra Monjar. I live at 2222 West Kootenai Street in Boise. And like the others who have spoken already, I just want to express my support for this project. I think this is the exact right place for more density, more housing within walkable distance of groceries, daily needs, downtown. And I really think that the higher density commercial zones within our downtown should be extended to this area. I think that in Boise, our downtown area gets really condensed, and I think in the future, this will be considered part of downtown. So I think this is a very appropriate place for a project like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else that would like to testify on this item tonight? Oh, one more. Ms. Seha, just give us a moment while we switch you over. And again, please start with your name and address. When you unmute, you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Esther Seha. I reside at 3901 North Cambria Way, 83703. You know, I echo what others have commented on, and that the location for high density on a transit corridor makes sense. My only comment on this is affordable housing. Last Monday, before you had a proposal in West Boise that had some affordable housing. This one seems to be a larger project in the core downtown area. And we need to move past that 80 to 100% AMI, because the need we know is also below that. If you look at the City of Boise's Housing Authority, we have for Section 8 housing, which is below that 80%, we have a 2 to 2.5 year wait for housing. So I just would encourage the developer and the commission to think about this. If we're really going to tackle affordable housing, we need to be looking at these projects, and we need to collaborate on how we can get more, not just 80 to 100, but below that AMI housing available for our workforce, because not everyone makes about 41,000 or above. That's it.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Seha. Okay, so if there's last call, if you're interested in speaking on this item tonight, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, then we will move on to a rebuttal from the applicant, and you'll have 5 minutes. Please start again with your name.
Again, my name is Matthew Cameron Clark. I'll be brief. Appreciate the support from the community. It's a lovely surprise to see so many people responding positively to this plan. We had some great conversations with people in the neighborhood and feel like we've settled on a project that's really going to serve the community. Parking is covered in this project. It's going to be a pedestrian and bicycle friendly, with a bike room and bike workbench available, and the drive-through concern also I think got covered by Mr. Moser. But we feel like we are going to be adding some serious inventory. This under the current zoning we'd be limited to 15 units. So by making this change tonight, we can add 100 new efficient but very livable, beautiful apartments to the neighborhood. So that's all I have. Tom, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I do, if you have any questions regarding the design of the building, I do know that what I'm worried about is making sure that the units are very livable and very nice with, again, lots of light, lots of air, and that's important for the folks that would be living here, because the units are not big 3-bedroom units, they're smaller units. And in order to have a very livable unit, that's why we have created lots of light in there, and that's what you see in the elevations. It's very important, I think, in this area.
Thank you. Great. Okay, so now we'll close the public portion of the hearing, and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Blanchard.
I move that we approve CAR 20-19.
Great. This would be recommend approval.
Yes, thank you.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Squires. Discussion.
Madam Chair, I'll start if that's okay.
Yes, please, Commissioner Squires.
So first of all, it's incredibly refreshing to hear community support for a project. Was not prepared for this evening, was prepared for angry neighbors, but thank you for those of you who stepped up and supported this project. I think it's great. Personally, I think this is the exact area that we need this type of project. Excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. For example, it's in the downtown mixed use zone, along with being in a transition area to downtown and an urban renewal area. So I think that's really important. It has access to transit, it's easily walkable, and it's bikeable. The density is very appropriate due to the overlays that were mentioned. Workforce housing is incredibly desirable in this location. And it is a redevelopment of a brownfield site. And I think that's worth noting. I think the DA provides assurance to the residents and limits the project to what's being proposed. And so I throw my full support behind this project, and just want to say thank you to the developer for proposing this.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I'll be supporting the motion as well, for all the reasons that Commissioner Squires just mentioned. I think staff did a nice job in the packet, summarizing the project and evaluating its merits. Just a couple of comments. I certainly do appreciate the need for housing downtown and increased density. I'll be perfectly honest, I'm a bit concerned about the overall height of the building. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing them drop a floor to max out at a 5-foot story building. It just feels maybe a bit tall for this location today. Now, granted, of course, as downtown continues to develop, this might become the norm. But as it stands today, it does feel a bit tall to me. And then to be perfectly frank, I would like to see more affordable units or an increase in the AMI percentages. I do appreciate that they've addressed that to some degree, but I think with 105 units, I would like to see an increase in one of those two metrics, either more units or a greater variety in the AMI. So those are my only two real concerns / comments about the project. Otherwise, I think it looks good and I'm in support.
Any additional comments?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Blanchard.
As the maker of the motion, I should probably just chime in really quick. But yeah, I want to thank Mr. Clark and Mr. Sheldon for a very thoughtful project. I think this is a perfect activation of the PC zone, actually, where you've actually got the building facing the sidewalk so that retail is approachable and livable space above. I mean, it's exactly what you want to do in a PC zone. I think, frankly, we're probably a little bit behind on implementing zoning on that State Street corridor. I think the comprehensive plan anticipates that it will change over time. And I think that's where everyone got the idea that this kind of density would be appropriate. But yeah, it's a great project. And yeah, we're certainly happy to see it go through with smooth sailing tonight. I did not anticipate that either. So thanks.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore, did you say Madam Chair? Sorry.
Yes. So I will be supporting the motion as well. A couple of things. I mean, the brownfield site, like Commissioner Squires mentioned, is just awesome to see that being utilized as infill as well. One item that I did notice in the ACHD staff report, there seems to be some sort of disconnect between the city's streetscape standards in this application versus ACHD streetscape standards. So I look forward to seeing how that kind of gets worked out as we work through these more urban blocks. Otherwise, I mean, it's a great project. The height, I'm unsure if it's a little high or not. It might be a little bit high, but I do understand the applicant's kind of desire to create higher ceilings, floor to ceiling windows and things like that. And I do appreciate that. So the amount of the thought that's gone into the reasoning behind those heights, I can appreciate as well. So I think it's a great project and look forward to seeing it move forward.
Thank you. Okay, so the item or the motion before us is to recommend approval for CAR 20-19 on 1522 West State Street. And will the clerk please call the vote?
Dunn,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Finfrock.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, next
Thank
we're
you.
on to item number 3. This is CAR 20-16 from Givens Pursley LLP, deferred from December 14th, 2020 at 6506 North Eugene Lane. It's an annexation of 2.97 acres with a rezone designation. We'll first hear from staff, and I think you're up, Ms. Nelson, please.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, before you is a request to annex approximately 2.9 acres with a zoning designation of A1DA, open lands with a development agreement located at 6506 North Eugene Lane. The site is on the north side of Hill Road in an area dominated by single-family dwellings on large lots and privately owned undeveloped parcels. The property is currently undeveloped and zoned rural preservation within Ada County, but is located within the Boise area of city impact and abuts Boise city limits to the northwest and south. The applicant requests A1DA zoning in order to allow the property to be developed with one single-family home in the future. The property configuration is a result of an improper land division by deed. The annexation and zoning will bring the property into conformance and make it developable. The planning team finds the proposed A1 DA zone to be appropriate for the property as it is allowed within the associated suburban comprehensive land use designation and is compatible with the surrounding land uses and zoning, which are single-family dwellings on land zoned A1 or R1C. Furthermore, the parcel is the last remaining parcel along Eugene Lane, which has not been annexed into the city. Future development on the site will be more restrictive than those surrounding properties which were annexed in 2015 due to the provisions of the DA, which limit development to one single-family home. The subject property and other annexed properties along Eugene Lane are not connected to city services and take access from a narrow, unimproved private lane. Despite these constraints, the city fire and sewer departments have provided comments indicating that annexation, which limits development to one single family home, is allowable for the property. Since this parcel is more than 1,000 feet away from a viable sewer connection, the city has the ability to not require connection. And given that the other properties along Eugene Lane were annexed with the sewer exemption, the planning team finds that a similar exemption is acceptable in this case. Future development of a single family home will require a hillside permit, and the fire department has indicated via email that a number of improvements will be required at that time, including that the home be fire sprinkled, a turnaround be provided on the property, a fire hydrant will be placed at the entrance onto Hill Road, and that a maintenance agreement be provided for Eugene Lane. The planning team has received a few comments from the public about the proposal related to the maintenance of Eugene Lane and a concern that annexation will allow for too intensive or incompatible development on the site. Regarding road maintenance, there is a recorded cross-access agreement which allows for access from and to Hill Road for the subject property, yet there are no provisions for maintenance. The commission or council could consider a provision to the DA that would require a maintenance agreement be finalized prior to development of the property. However, the planning team does not find this to be necessary at this time, as the fire department has indicated that a maintenance agreement will be a condition of approval for the future hillside permit. Regarding compatible development, the DA does include language which limits development to one single family home and has added an exhibit that details portions of the property which are not buildable due to steep slope of the land. The exhibit provided in the DA satisfies condition D1 in the planning report. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval. The commission will need to make a recommendation to City Council on the annexation and development agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll next hear from the applicant. We'll start with 10 minutes. I think this is going to be Mr. Bauer. Oh, there we are. Hi. Please start with your name and address.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Jeff Bauer, 601 West Bannock in Boise. I'm a land use attorney at Givens Pursley, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the owner and applicant of this property. First, thank you for your time tonight, and thanks to Ms. Nelson as well for her presentation. Extremely thorough, and I'll try not to repeat anything, but we do think this is a pretty straightforward application asking to rezone and annex this 2.9 acres of property. It is located in the city's area of impact, and we are essentially surrounded by city limits already, so we think annexation is appropriate. We have reviewed the project report and staff's proposed conditions of approval, and we're in agreement with all of those conditions. On the zoning, we did request A1 zoning here with a DA. We proposed in that DA that the site be limited to only one single family residence. And we think that with the A1 zoning and that limitation in the DA, we do strike a balance between protecting the existing neighborhood while still providing a housing unit on an infill site in the city. I do want to stress tonight that we aren't proposing any specific development project or bringing any hillside development application forward. Really, the impetus for this application was to correct an illegal lot split that occurred in the 1970s by deed. And so what's occurred here really is our client has inherited this property through her mother, who inherited it from her father. And over the course of time, this property's just been vacant and no one's dealt with this illegal subdivision issue. So after looking at the property, the comprehensive plan, the area of city impact map, we decided that this annexation and rezone was the best way to bring the property into conformance, to make it insurable and saleable to a third party. The current owner has no intent to develop. This is really just an issue of cleaning up title to make sure it can be sold. On the access issue, I agree with everything Ms. Nelson said. We don't believe that this needs to be addressed tonight. There is no, again, any development proposed tonight. Your recommendation of approval won't add any traffic to the road. And ultimately, our position would be this is a private road on private property, and we do have a recorded access agreement that allows us to use this road for access. So in the end, we're not sure what the maintenance agreement would look like, but that's certainly out of our control at this time. There's 7 property owners that use this road. And as you can see from the public comments, they've been unable to reach a consensus on maintenance for many years. So again, we would request that no action be taken on maintenance tonight. And to the extent the city thinks that's necessary, it be deferred to the future hillside application that will come before this commission. Again, we agree with all staff's conditions. We thank you for your time, and I would be happy to stand for any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Before we hit questions, I'm going to see if there's anybody present representing the Collister Neighborhood Association. If so, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, not seeing one, then we will move on to questions from the commission for staff or for the applicant, please.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the RP zone. Is that Ada County code? And again, this is for the city. I don't know if I referenced that, but that's Ada County code and not Boise City code. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, yes, RP is in Ada County. So it's city is surrounded by city on 3 sides, but it is currently in Ada County.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have a question, Carla. If can you speak to that term about the maintenance that he was just saying, that can we hold on making any decisions about the maintenance? Can you speak to that, please?
Sure, Madam Chair. The hillside permit will require approval by fire, among others in the city, and the fire department has indicated that a maintenance agreement will be a requirement of that approval at that time. So staff is in agreement with the applicant here that it's not needed with the annexation. There's not going to be anything built until they get their hillside permit. And so it's appropriate in our opinion to wait, but it is at the discretion of the commission what you want to do.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Just a quick follow-up to staff. Carla, do you know, is there an existing maintenance agreement on the road?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, there is not.
Interesting. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no more questions, we'll next move to public testimony. So if you would like to testify on this item tonight, please virtually raise your hand and we'll just start moving our way down the line. We'll start with Ms. Schofield. Once you just give us a moment, please, to switch you over. And then once you unmute, please start with your name and address. You should be ready to go now once you unmute. Erica, oh, yep, there you go. Erica, are you there? We can see your screen, but have not heard you yet. Still not hearing you. I know that we do have a phone number that we can call into. We'll throw it in the chat really quick. Just hang tight if you don't mind.
Madam Chair, my internet's being slow. Hold, just give me a few more minutes.
Thank you. Erica, you can also try, if you think you should have audio, sometimes it helps me if I just log out and log back in. And so if we see you again, we can pop you back over. If you want to try that while we're getting the rest of the information up. Okay, why don't we, is there, because while Ms. Schofield is coming back on or perhaps dialing in, is there anybody else that would like to speak on this item tonight? Great. Mr. Llewellyn, we'll get you switched over here and then please start with your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead when you're ready to unmute. You're muted right now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, Commission. Richard Llewellyn, 9170 Hill Road. We wanted to point out that this area, which I know well, having some best friends growing up on Eugene Lane here, is not 1.7 miles from a fire station, but is 2.7. So there was an error in the document received by the Boise Fire. There's been a lot of developments up North Collister that are 1.7 miles. I think it was probably just some sort of switcheroo, but it's clearly an error. And so right now the application is the information that you're presented. There is a clear error. Here is the area as you see it now. Off in the north, you will see it's often black and charred. This is what we saw 3 years ago. This is not all that unusual for this area, unfortunately. That was from September 1st, 2017. Regarding the fact that this is surrounded by annexed land, in 1999, the Pierce Park Gulch was annexed, but it was annexed based on having a fire station in the area, which they said would be no farther west than Pierce Park Lane. There is no fire station. And again, there is an error in the fire letter. It's a 60% error. It's no small error. And so annexation, we're supposed to have only annex when there's substantial compliance with level of service standards. And as a fire for 1.5 miles, that's clearly out of compliance with 2.7 miles. And then for a rezone, it should be in the best interest of the public convenience and general welfare. Well, right now, our fire response times are increasing throughout the city, and they have been for the last, decade and a half or so. And so when we get a new fire ISO rating from the Insurance Standard Office, as our times go up and up and up, and now they are approaching twice what we have in code as being the 4-minute standard at 90th percentile. We're up over 7 now. When the ISO rating is reviewed by the National Insurance Office, if we're no longer, if our response times are no longer adequate, then everybody's in the city is going to pay more for fire and for insurance. And so we really need to think about when we're annexing into the wildland urban interface in a fire prone area outside of level of service standards, is this in the best interest of Boise at large? And I think it is not. So until that's resolved, until there's fire can look at this again and say, oops, yeah, we were talking about North Collister probably. It's not 1.7 miles, it's 2.7. I think you should reconsider this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Llewellyn. Let's try again with Ms. Schofield. Please try to unmute when you can. Shoot, still no, but I do see a call-in phone number, and I wonder if that is perhaps Ms. Schofield's audio.
Erica, if you can't hear us, I put the phone number in the chat. And if that doesn't work for some reason, I can put my cell phone number in the chat. We've had that happen before. Is there a call? Oh, there we go. Okay, Erica, try, if you're on the phone, try talking now.
After you unmute.
After you unmute yourself. No.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, so now let's see if I can get my slides back up there. Let's see. Share screen. Oh, this is quite frustrating. I used to work just fine with all of this, and things have been going downhill over the last couple sessions. So, not doing anything. Come on.
Erica, we can see your slide. Oh, no, we can't.
Oh, hold on. It might be doing it now. I've got the launch meeting screen, but I'm no longer seeing my PowerPoints.
Neither are we.
Okay.
Zoom should be as a separate window because we could just see your PowerPoints as you closed them.
How do I get my PowerPoint up there again? There it is. Okay, you can hear me and see the screen.
Yes, we're winning.
Okay. All right. Erica Schofield, 7363 West Limelight Court. Let the record reflect that this application, if it is approved, means this parcel is outside of the required 1.5 mile 4-minute level of service standard for fire response. The letter from the Boise Fire Department showed the 1.7 miles for the fire station from Station 9, but no map is attached. So I used the popular Google Maps technology, and you can see that on the screen on the right there, that shows the distance is 2.7 miles and 6 minutes from Boise Fire Station 9. It's likely that this is a typo and was not an intentional misrepresentation, as it may have been meant for the distance of 0.7 miles from the approved fire station on Pierce Park Lane. But this cannot be disregarded or ignored. The level of service standard for fire response is contained in Policy PDP 5.1 and Table 3 of the Comprehensive Plan. It is derived from ordinance. The policies in the Comprehensive Plan are implemented by ordinance as allowed by Idaho law. Ordinance 5517 and 4316 are for the level of service standard for fire response. This is not a discretionary issue. Tonight is the 17th time I have testified on the issue of emergency and fire safety. Why? Because I've spent the past 3 years researching the city's record of more than 30 years of not complying with the required level of service standard for fire response in relation to land use law. This has made me wonder if the insurance industry or a personal injury lawyer has realized it may be able to recover payments for claims incurred due to Boise's failure to comply with the law. I used to work within the realm of the insurance industry. One thing I know for sure is that the insurance industry is big business and that insurance companies are more than willing to seek out parties that may be liable for the cause and thus responsible for the costs involved. Arriving at a scene outside of the 4 minutes is not cause enough for liability, as traffic can hinder response time, but knowingly annexing areas that are entirely outside of the required response time and distance standards set forth by ordinance could be considered as cause, especially since Idaho's annexation law states that all property and persons are subject to all ordinances upon annexation. That's Idaho Code 50-223. And that the Idaho and U.S. constitutions both include the principle of equal protection under the laws. In addition, Boise's record includes substantial evidence that could further support cause, as shown on my last slide. There's too much to cover here in the short amount of time, so I'll highlight bullet point number 3, which was approving the budget for a Pierce Park Lane fire station under the mayor's urgent service needs request. And it specifically stated the criteria of possible legal ramifications if issues are not addressed at this time. That station location would cover this particular area you're looking at tonight. And it is the station that was used to approve the 96 home development in the Pierce Gulch area just to the north of this. I will close by saying I used to be uncomfortable pointing out the failure of city government, but I have come to realize that I have a civic duty to do so, as actions have consequences, and my testimony could mean someone's life or their property or...
Thank you. That's time. Okay, is there anybody else that would like to testify on this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to rebuttal from the applicant. You'll have up to 5 minutes. Jeff, please start again with your name.
Madam Chair, Jeff Bauer, 601 West Bannock. I'm sorry, I'm getting some notifications here from the Zoom. Wants me to start video. All right, here we go. I'll be brief. I think the only issue that was raised by the public was with respect to fire. I have looked at the fire department's letter. There does appear to be a typo, but at the end of the day, I think Ms. Nelson spoke to fire directly. They discussed the site, and there was no objection raised by Boise Fire as to this application. I've listened to Mr. Llewellyn and Mrs. Schofield speak on this issue at length, as I'm sure you have as well. The Boise City Code nor the Idaho Code has any legal requirement for any response time or distance traveled for fire. Those are goals set forth in Boise's comprehensive plan. And, you know, we simply don't have the information here from fire about what their response time is. But what I can say is that all of the homes in the immediate vicinity of the property were annexed by the city in 2015, and that adding one single family home to an area that's already being served by fire, I don't think will extend service unreasonably. We are in the WUI district, which means that when we do come forward with our hillside development permit, we will have to implement the city's defensible space requirements to limit fire and protect that area. And the last thing I'll mention on fire is, again, approval or recommendation of approval tonight will not change the landscape of the property. No home will be built until further approvals are granted by the city. The land will remain vacant upon annexation and zoning in this case. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Okay, well, with that, we will close the public portion of the hearing and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Finfrock.
I recommend approval of CAR 20-16 along with the recommended and standard conditions of approval.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Schaefer. Discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I think, like the applicant pointed out, the Boise Fire Department approved the application, and we just have to defer to their expertise. We're not, we don't sit here and try to calculate time or even understand that. At least I don't on a personal level or professional level. So I think we just have to defer to that correspondence that they provided us in our packet, and for that reason, I'm going to move this, motion forward.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Obviously, I'm in support of the motion. I agree with Commissioner Finfrock. At the end of the day, this is simply an annexation application. There is no development associated with this application whatsoever. And per the staff report, fire and the city, all city services have evaluated the property for annexation. They've noted their requirements for the future development of that property. And furthermore, the property is surrounded by Boise City zoning and properties, and I feel that the A1 zone is absolutely appropriate for this piece of property. So again, if this was a development of some sort tied to this, then I think we'd have some more scrutiny to look at the property. But as it stands right now, as a basic annexation and zoning application, I see no issue with staff's report.
Great. Okay. So with that, we have before us a motion to recommend approval for CAR 20-16 at 6506 North Eugene Lane. And will the clerk please call the vote?
Sneed.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Squires.
Aye.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Finfrock.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. Okay. Before we return to item 4 and 5, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back at 5 after. And we're back. So we're going to start with item number 4. This is CUP 20-50 for Anderson Whalen and Associates, deferred from December 14th, 2020. This is 11304 West Fairview Avenue. This is a conditional use permit for a drive-up window associated with a financial institution. We'll start with staff, and again, Ms. Nelson.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, before you is a conditional use permit for a drive-up window associated with a financial institution in a C2D general commercial with design review zone. The site is located on the corner of Fairview and Steelwood Avenues. Commercial uses line Fairview Avenue in this area, including another financial institution with a drive-up window to the south. The proposed financial institution and drive-up window are part of a larger mixed-use development consisting of 38 attached townhomes, an existing car dealership overflow parking lot, and 2 commercial lots. The associated plan unit development and preliminary plat have been approved. The site plan for the drive-up window shows an approximately 3,000 square foot financial institution toward the corner of Fairview and Steelwood Avenues, with an attached awning on the north side of the building and 3 drive-through lanes. The planning team has included a few conditions which are opposed by the applicant. These conditions would close one of the driveways onto the shared service drive and would limit the number of parking spaces to the maximum allowed by Boise City Code. The related subdivision requires cross-access between the 2 commercial lots along Fairview Avenue. Cross-access was required to minimize conflict points between vehicles and pedestrians by limiting curb cuts onto the shared service drive. 38 townhomes are planned to the north side of the shared service drive, and people will be walking in the area. For this reason, the planning team has included a condition that the driveway entrance directly to the east of the trash enclosure be closed with 5-foot wide sidewalk and landscaping. Limiting curb cuts and designing sites to ensure pedestrian access and comfort is supported by the comprehensive plan and Boise City Code. Regarding parking, Boise City Code requires 1 parking space per 300 square feet of floor area for financial institutions. Given the size of the structure, the maximum allowed number of parking spaces is 20, while the applicant is proposing to have 23 spaces. Boise City Code does allow for administrative level waivers to exceed parking maximum if the findings shown on this slide can be met. However, the planning team has not been able to find anything unique about the use or site to justify more parking, as other financial institutions with drive-up windows in the area have kept their numbers of parking spaces within the maximum allowed by code. Also, keeping the number of spaces to the code maximum will allow space for better site circulation for pedestrians and vehicles. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the application with conditions. The commission will make a final decision on the CUP. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. We'll next hear from the applicant. Mr. Randall, please start with your name and address once you unmute, and you're welcome to turn on your video if you'd like, and you'll have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission. This is Jeff Randall, 2010 North Redwood Road, Salt Lake City, Utah. I can turn on my video, but I'm sitting in my car, so hopefully that'll be okay, and you can see me still. I'm traveling on the road and handling this at the same time. So we appreciate your time this evening. America First Credit Union is expanding into the Boise area. America First Credit Union is the 6th largest credit union in the country with assets over $7 billion. They've got over 110 branches, mostly in Utah and Nevada, but are expanding up into Idaho, Arizona, New Mexico, and some other areas. And so they're excited with this to be the first branch up in the Boise area to service the city of Boise. As Carla talked about, America First is proposing a approximately 3,000 square foot branch and drive-through there on Fairview. The drive-through is a conditional use, and we've been working with Carla and staff on the site layout and so forth. Overall, in general, I mean, we had a neighborhood meeting. We had no turnout at the neighborhood meeting and no feedback from them. We have overall are acceptable with the staff's conditions other than item number 5 and number 6 that Carla laid out there in her presentation. In item number 5, the staff is requesting that we close one of our driveways onto the shared service drive to help manage or limit curb cuts and driveways onto streets per the comprehensive plan. While I totally understand and we agree with managing and limiting access points, that is typically on public roads, where traffic's going anywhere from 25 to 45 miles an hour. This is a internal driveway within our development between different commercial pads and uses, that it is an internal driveway similar to what you would drive through in any, I'll call it shopping center or retail commercial development. And access points are not typically reduced or managed along those driveways other than when they get close to the public right of way. And that's where the city, steps in to make sure that they're managing the public safety as it gets out near the public roadways. So we are asking that we keep that, we ask for the commission's support in maintaining that access. Internal access and circulation is critical to success of any commercial business. And America First Credit Union feels that they need this driveway to keep their circulation from being dead end parking essentially, and being able to provide easy in and out of the site to get out to the public streets. The other thing that the closing the driveway does is it does reduce our parking, which is item number 6. The staff has pointed out that the code allows for a maximum of 20 stalls. We are asking for 23. The reasoning behind that, that characteristics, the unique characteristics of the use here is that America First Credit Union on any given shift has between 12 and 14 employees in that building. And they service their members by essentially 1 employee per 1 member. So if they've got 12 employees in there, they're planning on having 12 members in there at one time to service them and to provide the service that they're doing. Now, the lines can even queue up a little bit more than that. And so America First is asking that we get your support in maintaining the 23 parking stalls that we have shown on the site, as they feel that those will be necessary in being able to provide the employee parking stalls and the member parking stalls that are going to be needed on the site. If parking is reduced down to 20, in our opinion, that has a negative impact on the adjacent streets and pads and uses around us, in that cars will now have to park elsewhere to come. They've got to park on the neighboring properties, potentially park on the streets, and that's not in the best interest of the public, in our opinion. So we would ask for the commission's assistance in both number 5 and number 6 in allowing the site plan to be approved as shown. One other note, that the commission, or excuse me, the staff did ask for the sidewalk on both sides of that service drive, on both sides of it. We have adjusted the site plan to accommodate those sidewalks, and so we are okay with that request, and we'll show those sidewalks on the final plans.
Thank
With
you,
that,
Mr.
I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so first, before we get to questions, I don't think we have anybody from the West Valley Neighborhood Association on, but just wanted to check. Okay, seeing none, then we will go on to questions from the commission for staff or the applicant.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore and then Commissioner Schaefer.
Thank you. Carla, could you show that slide with the conditions to deviate from those parking requirements?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, let me share my screen again.
I apologize if that was in the staff report. I wasn't able to find it.
Is this the slide you're looking for, Commissioner Moore?
The conditions to grant a variance from the parking maximums. Yeah, that one. Thank you.
Carla, on that too, on the conditions, I would be interested next in seeing maybe, do you have a illustration or something that would show us in regards to the objection to condition number 5 and that connectivity? Do you have something that you could show us maybe that would indicate that pass through and why it should be closed?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, so there are townhomes proposed just to the north of the shared service drive. So we wanted to close as many of these curb cuts as possible just to create a better walking environment, because every time there's a driveway, there's opportunities for conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles. And in this case, cross access is required between these two commercial lots along Fairview, and there is more parking that is required by our code, and the trash enclosure can be reoriented to allow for plenty of space to allow vehicles to come through the drive-through lanes without necessitating this driveway entrance.
Thank you. And Commissioner Moore, sorry, was your question answered?
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Question for staff. Carla, can you talk to us about, I guess, process? Does this go to design review after us, or is this the final step before they go for building permit?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, there is a design review requirement with this application.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we can move to public testimony. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to testify on this item? Okay, seeing none. Then we'll go to, it would be time for rebuttal from the applicant. Mr. Randall, you'd have up to 5 minutes, but also you're welcome to waive as there was no testimony.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to present other than if there's any questions from the commission, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. At this point, we'll close the public portion of the hearing and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I move to approve CUP 20-50 with all the terms and condition as written in the staff report.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Moore. Is there discussion, Commissioner Schaefer?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just real quick. Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, I think this is a CUP, right? We're looking at the drive-through use of the facility. I think it's appropriate for the site and the vicinity. I appreciate the siting of the building near the streets. And then I'm good with the conditions as laid out, as staff laid out in the report, obviously. And then I'm going to let our colleagues in DER further fine tune that site plan. I suspect that Republic Services and the city waste will have some more comments on the siting of the trash enclosure. I don't think it's going to work in this configuration anyhow. So I definitely foresee some revisions forthcoming. But again, I think that's more for the purview of design review.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
Just in reference to the parking increase from those maximums, based on those kind of items that Carla had listed to get approval for that, I don't see a way that we can justify it fitting within any of those. So I'm also in support of the 20 parking space maximum for that.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other questions, we have the item before us or the motion before us is to approve CUP 20-50 at 11304 West Fairview Avenue. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Squires.
Aye.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Sinfrock.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. Okay, so the last item of the evening is item number 5. This is CUP 20-45 and CVA 20-63 for Colleen Carroll, deferred from December 14th, 2020. This is 8440 West Victory Road, a conditional use permit for outdoor storage. And we'll hear from staff, Mr. Mansfield.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. Let me fire up my PowerPoint really quickly. Please let me know if you can't see that.
We got you.
Or if you cannot hear me. Perfect. Okay. Madam Chair, Commissioners, the final item on tonight's agenda is a request for a conditional use permit and a variance to reduce the setback adjacent to residential properties for an outdoor storage facility located at 8440 and 8300 West Victory Road in a light industrial zone with a design review overlay. The site wraps 2 existing large residential properties that contain accessory non-residential uses. 5 Mile Creek courses along the site's northern boundary. A 15-foot wide landscape buffer is typically required when an industrial parking use abuts a residential use. The applicant is requesting a variance to this standard. The planning team supports a variance to reduce the buffer to 8 feet, which is outlined in the project report. And you can see that in green here. This width of 8 feet will allow for flexibility in the design review process to determine specific landscaping requirements, including the placement of trees here. Closed vision fencing is required along the southern and western boundaries of the site. Due to the natural creek buffer on the north and the parking yard to the east, existing 6-foot open and closed vision fencing will remain along these boundaries. Based on comments received from the residents of the eastern property wrapped by the site, closed vision wood or vinyl fencing specifically will be installed adjacent to that parcel, and you can see that in red. Comments received from the Idaho Department of Water Resources recommended that no permits be issued until the applicant obtained required floodplain permits. This CUP approval is thus contingent upon the applicant obtaining these permits. Furthermore, the design review permit will not be issued until these floodplain permits are issued and the floodplain issue is resolved. Comments were received from owners of both residential parcels wrapped by the site. The resident of the western parcel asked that no trees be planted adjacent to his property. The residents of the eastern parcel expressed concern around the landscaping and fencing requirements, an unused well on the subject site, and existing irrigation infrastructure. Comments regarding landscaping will be considered through the design review process. In addition to the requirement for wood or vinyl fencing along the eastern residential property boundary, a condition of approval to comply with the local irrigation providers addresses concerns regarding irrigation infrastructure. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of CUP 2045 and CVA 2063 with the conditions listed in the staff report. Thanks, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. I see 2 online, so please start with your name and address, each of you, and we'll start with 10 minutes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Oh, it looks like you just muted again, Mark.
How about now?
We got you back.
Sorry about that. Good evening, commissioners, staff, and virtual neighbors. My name is Mark Salvi, partner and representative at 8440 West Victory Road in Boise, Idaho, 83709. First, I want to thank city staff and particularly Ethan and Casey for all your help with my CUP design review application for Simply Storage. I am in agreement with the staff conditions of approval. I do want to be a good neighbor and provide adequate screening for the residential uses. However, my one neighbor located at 8390, as pointed out by Ethan, has written a letter expressing to ask for no additional landscaping or fencing around his house. and providing an additional buffer with trees around the 8350 West Victory Road property will just be temporary until the future when this site eventually gets developed. Again, we do want to be good neighbors and we want to do what's right and fair for everybody. We do not mind putting up additional fencing that site obscuring. We would like to discuss further with design review in regards to the landscape requirements. So we want to be sure we have our heads fully wrapped around that. And as far as the issue with the water rights, getting irrigation water onto the neighboring site, I'm unaware of any damage being done with the water being delivered. But we will certainly look into that and work cooperatively to get that address fixed if we did indeed damage it. As far as the well located at the 8300 West Victory location, upon developing the site, we will certainly look into that because we're going to need to go through the design review process when we develop the site. We have to keep in mind that this is truly just a temporary use. With our exploding housing market, we are providing a much needed service, even if it is temporary. The market demands storage at this time, but again, in the future, our long-term plan is to develop this parcel and hopefully include the existing non-conforming residential uses into our future plans for the industrial development, which again will require design review, building permits, hooking into city utilities, and addressing that well. I feel this is a great way to offer budget parking for people struggling to afford current market rates. And in the meantime, storage is truly one of those industries right now that I think people are paying more than they need to. And I think this is just a great opportunity to let people park a boat, RV, trailer at a budget rate while we're waiting to develop the site. We are diligently working with surrounding neighbors, city staff, and our floodplain engineer, Carl Gebhardt, to obtain the LOMAR that was addressed by Ethan. Over the last several years, we have been working with both Jim Wiley and Hal Simmons at the city of Boise to relocate while relocating 5 Mile Creek, and we are currently working closely with Cody Riddle to continue on with the LOMAR project. I respectfully request your approval of the CUP and variance, and I will be glad to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Salvi. So next I would be calling on the South Cole Neighborhood Association. I don't see any attendees. So then we'll move on to questions from the commission for staff or for the applicant.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
This question is for staff. In the packet, in our packet, it said, actually, this actually might be late correspondence. One of the neighbors requested an 8-foot fence, I believe, and I just wanted to maybe ask the city, so if they could comment as to, is there an issue with the height of the fence? Because I know the actual condition says 6 foot, and I think the neighbor had requested 8. So I just was hoping for clarification on that.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, excuse me. Yes, there is a condition for a 6-foot fence. That's standard for this type of development. Especially in residential developments, it's actually, you need a variance to exceed the 6-foot height. For commercial developments like this, we do occasionally see higher fencing, but that was not really considered here because I guess the 6 foot is just the standard fencing height, and it's just not typically seen to go above 8. And usually across the city, you see 6 foot and only see a variance when and require a variance to go over. Although the code does specify that that's only applies to residential uses, so that could technically, you could go above 6 feet in this commercial and industrial area.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
So follow up for Ethan. So when I was looking at this is a pretty industrial area, and to have people in and out of that of the actual property, picking up vehicles or whatnot. I mean, is it your recommendation that maybe it would be okay to go 8 feet since it does align their backyard? Or what are your thoughts on that? Is there, I mean, it seems like the neighbor has stated that they can be in agreement with everything as long as it's an 8-foot fence, and it might be just a little give and take here. And so I'm just wondering your thoughts.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, when I spoke with the neighbor last, I think they had indicated that they were amenable to a wood or vinyl 6-foot fence. However, if 8 feet is something that would satisfy the commission, I will take a look at code to ensure that there's no issues with that. But I'm confident, fairly confident, that a 6-foot, that an 8-foot maximum is allowed in these industrial zones. So if that's something that the commission wants to include in the conditions, there's no issue with that, pending my double checking code.
Okay. All right. I'm good with the 6 foot. I was just wondering, if we could meet in the middle or what you thought about that. So I really appreciate your feedback on that. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Blanchard.
just a quick question for staff. Ethan, can you just like mouse over on your presentation there where the Hess property is?
Yes, that would be, Madam Chair, Commissioner Blanchard, that would be this piece right here.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Oh, it looks like, I think, did Mr. Salvi want to answer that? I see his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to wait
Please.
until I could. With regards to that 8-foot fence.
Please, go ahead.
I would be up to discussing. I was unaware of the 8-foot fence being a requirement either. I think that they were okay with 6. But in exchange for some landscaping, I would put a little taller fence up if I didn't have to put trees and shrubs around the fence. As long as it's a matter of just blocking the vision, I would be okay with that. And I just run the vegetation along Victory and just make sure we have an extra tall fence around between the neighbor and I. I mean, I'm open to something like that.
Thank you, Mr. Salvi. Okay, any further questions? All right, so seeing none, we would move on to public testimony, but I don't see anybody present. So we'll move past that. So next it would be the opportunity for a rebuttal from the applicant, but Mr. Salvi, there's been no testimony, so you're also welcome to waive that 5-minute rebuttal.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
Let's see. I move to approve CUP 20-45 and CVA 20-63 along with the recommended and standard conditions of approval.
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Blanchard, I think. Yes, okay, great. Any discussion, Commissioner Finfrock?
Yeah, Madam Chair, it's straightforward. I think Ethan definitely prepared this application pretty well. And as far as the 8-foot, it could have, I was just reading through my notes and writing them down. So that could have been just my interpretation of it. But it sounds like he's definitely done his homework and worked with the neighbors and the applicant. So good job from the city. And I think we're good to go on this.
Great. Any further discussion? Sorry, I just threw my agenda away. Okay, so seeing none, we have a motion to approve CUP 20-45 and CVA 20-63 at 8440 West Victory Road. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Ed,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Wires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore, Moore.
Yeah, we.
There we go. Sorry.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you so much. We are adjourned. Good night. Thanks for your patience tonight on some of our tech issues.
See y'all.